Wednesday, April 12th. Before we get started, link is in the description below to sign up for PrizePicks, or you guys can use promo code TUFF to sign up. They will match 100% of your first deposit. Discord link in the description, as well as Patreon link in the description, where I do post all the plays here that I'm making on PrizePicks for each given sport that I do play. Again, I'm not a gambling expert. This is not financial advice. Simply just plays I'm personally looking at making. Hopefully give you guys some insight and analysis to make your own player prop decisions here. But let's get right into it, you guys. Two gameplay here. We did go 2 for 2 yesterday on the YouTube plays. D'Angelo Russell did not really play well at all. He still had 8 assists, and then Sadiq Bey actually cashed this in the third quarter. So 2-0 day yesterday. Definitely looking to replicate that today. I got 2 plays here that I'm targeting, one from each game. We got Toronto versus Chicago in Toronto and OKC versus New Orleans in New Orleans. So should be a fun one here. Obviously these play-in games, both those play-in games yesterday were pretty fun to watch, pretty exciting. So let's not waste any time. Let's just get right into it. The first one I'm targeting here is going to be Pascal Siakam over his 41.5 fantasy score. This has been a wagon kind of since the All-Star break. You can see here 3 of his last 5 games he has hit the over on this. Had a dud against Boston here, which Toronto just played horribly as a team, and then had a dud here against Philadelphia. But you can see here 60, 54, and 52 in 3 straight games in April. But let's just get into this. So this should be a close game, 5.5 point spread here for Pascal Siakam at home game for Toronto, and home games for Pascal Siakam have just been absolute wagons. We can see here his fantasy score game log this season at home. Let's just take a look at really since the All-Star break, or even down here since January 1st or January 21st, 51, 46, 60, 54, 45, 42. So there was a run here where he hit this in 6 straight. From January to February. Had 2 dud games here against Chicago. Actually only had 36.1 fantasy, played 34 minutes, 28 and 3 and 1, 36.1, right? So not the greatest. Did shoot 7 for 18 from the field. But then had 27 here against Denver, just a really kind of weird stretch of run games for him. But then went on a nice little run of 53, 45, 55, 52, 35.2, and then 44.3 here against Miami. But what I like about this play more specifically is the minutes that Pascal Siakam is going to play and the volume and the usage that he's going to see. So we can see here Pascal Siakam's fantasy score game log last season in the playoffs. He played 40 plus minutes in every single game. He did hit the over on this in 4 of 6 games, 40.5 and 30 against Philly, but then had 43, 47, and then you can see here these 2 home games last season against Philadelphia in the playoffs, 48.9 fantasy in 44 minutes and 57.1 fantasy in 44 minutes. Over his last 5 games here, Pascal Siakam is averaging 1.29 fantasy points per minute over the last 5, 1.26 over the last 10. So, if he plays 40 plus minutes tonight, 1.29, essentially 1.3 fantasy points per minute, should put him pretty easily over his 41.5 fantasy score line is what we're looking at here. Pascal Siakam, really over the last month or so, is averaging 44.7 fantasy points per 36 minutes, seeing the highest usage on the team at 25.7 here. Obviously, he's averaging, well over 40 plus minutes. You can see his game log at home. He's averaging like 35 to 38 minutes at home, but a playoff game here, we know the usage will be insane here for Pascal Siakam. The splits at home versus away here, he averages 25.1 points at home compared to 23.4 points on the road. Pretty much all his stats across the board go up at home. Obviously shoots a better field goal percentage, shoots way better from 3. Not that he takes a ton of threes, but shoots way better from 3, gets to the free throw line more. Stats across the board go up quite a bit at home. And then we take a look at something else. You can see here over the last, 7 games of the season. Now, obviously, different rotations towards the end of the season, but Bulls giving up the there's this 6th most points per game to the power forward position, as well as the 5th most rebounds to the power forward position. But what I also like here is that the Bulls have been tough against point guards. We can see your last 7 of the season, 4th fewest points per game to the point guard position, even over the last 15 games. The 2nd fewest points per game to the point guard position. With that backcourt of Caruso and Beverly, it's going to be tough for Van Fleet to kind of score. So I definitely think Pascal Siakam should be able to get going, especially with the size advantage that he'll have against versus DeMar DeRozan here. We take a look at the rotations with minutes here. We're looking at Pascal Siakam over his last 3, 32.5. Over his last 10 games, 36.6 minutes per game. I see no question if this game remains close that Pascal Siakam plays 40 plus minutes in this matchup, which leaving him at 41.5 fantasy just seems a little bit too low for all the things that he is able to do on the court. Again, at home, Pascal Siakam, an absolute monster. And then we take a look at his PRA. It is listed at 40.5 on Unibet, or 39.5 on Unibet, 40.5 on BetRivers. But he's minus 120 and minus 120 on BetMGM and DraftKings to go over 36.5, which is a nice little difference to fantasy score, which he is able to get some steals and blocks. You can see here he's had 2, 4, 2, and 4 blocks and steals over his last 4 games here. I like Pascal Siakam over 41.5 fantasy as the first play. Second one here is going to be an interesting one, and one that I can't see a scenario where this doesn't turn green for us, in my opinion. It's going to be Brandon Ingram over 21.5 field goal attempts. Against OKC. So this is a home game here. The only thing when doing my research on this play, right? This is a 5.5 point spread, by the way. Nance is questionable. Obviously, there's going to be no Zion. But the only questionable or just red flag that I saw in doing my research here was his game log this season. His doesn't have a great hit rate at home. You can see here, over his last 25 games, he's only hit this twice at home. Most of these times he's hit the over on this. You can see here 22. Only 2 times he's hit the over at home. But this is a playoff game here. This is a, loser goes home. The loser of this game, this is a 9-10 matchup. So the loser of this game season is over. And Brandon Ingram in a kind of similar type of game atmosphere against Minnesota to end the season, where he did play 42 minutes. He took 28 field goal attempts. 28 field goal attempts in that matchup. I definitely see Brandon Ingram just looking to will his team to win in this matchup here. He already faced OKC this season back on February 13th, and he had 24 field goal attempts in that matchup, so he clearly hit the over on that one. We can see here OKC is third in pace, so it should be a nice pace-up matchup for Brandon Ingram as well. Should getting in more shots here. Odds here, Brandon Ingram's over 30.5, minus 123 to score 30 points. 30.5 points per game. Points tonight for Brandon Ingram. He's probably going to need to take 20-plus field goal attempts, hopefully getting those 2 additional ones for us here. But you can see, Brandon Ingram over his last home or away. This is a playoff game, so I don't think home or away really matters. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 7 of his last 12 games, he has hit the over on this one here. As far as taking 22 field goal attempts in this matchup. Again, similar matchup, you guys. This is essentially a playoff game here against Minnesota on the road, and Brandon Ingram just took 28 field goal attempts. He had 42 points on 28 field goal attempts. I'm hoping we can get something similar tonight. I just can't see a scenario where in a must-win game, Brandon Ingram doesn't take 22 shots. Just honestly, guys, more of a gut feeling here, but I like Brandon Ingram over 21.5 field goal attempts over. These are the 2 plays for this YouTube video. It's going to be Pascal Siakam over 41.5 fantasy, Brandon Ingram over 21.5 field goals attempted. Let me know in the comments below how you guys feel about these 2 plays. Hopefully we can continue this run. Drop a like, hit the subscribe button. As always, let's cash.